Welcome to The Hidden Load, the podcast where we uncover the unseen weight carried by the educators and leaders in medicine and explore how to lighten it. I am Dr. Santina or Tina Wheat. I am a family physician, an educator, a leader, and a coach. Each week, we will dig into the challenges that often go unspoken, from burnout and boundaries to purpose and identity to figuring out sustainability, and share practical tools to help you move from chaos to calm and from burnout to balance. Because the hidden load does not have to be yours to carry alone, and in fact, shouldn't be. Let's get started. Welcome back to The Hidden Load, the podcast where we talk about the invisible, unspoken weight carried by the educators and leaders in medicine. The cognitive load, the emotional labor, the responsibility that doesn't show up on a schedule, but shapes everything that we do. This is episode 20, why you snap at the people you love after work and why it's not your fault. I am your host, Dr. Santina or Tina Wheat. I am a family physician, an educator, and a career and life coach. And today I want to start with something that my daughter said to me. Recently we're taking a walk and she said, "You are way less annoying than you used to be." And I want to be clear, this wasn't the first time that she mentioned this. And the first time that she said it, I honestly thought that it was about her. She gave me a vague timeline, and based on that timeline, I thought it reflected something that she had been going through, a developmental phase, which was a season of some big feelings that she had gotten through. And I remember thinking, okay, this is about where she is emotionally, and that's okay, this will pass. But when we talked about it this time, it was different. This time, she was really specific, and she gave me a time period and linked it with specific things. So I knew we were now talking about a time that was different than I originally thought, and I knew when she meant. And my daughter wasn't fake, and she wasn't emotional about it. She was just matter of fact, as she often is. And I suddenly realized something that was uncomfortable to sit with. It wasn't actually about her. This was about me. And when that landed, I didn't just feel one thing. I felt so many things. I felt sadness about who I had been. I felt grief. I honestly felt a quiet kind of shame. And I felt responsibility. Not responsibility in a self-blaming way. Well, maybe originally it was a self-blaming way, but responsibility in a truth-telling way. Because what she was naming, it wasn't how much I loved her. It wasn't how much I was available for her, but it was actually my presence and my capacity. And even though this moment happened with my child, what I want to talk about today applies even more broadly than with our children. Because this doesn't just happen with kids. It happens with our partners. It happens with friends. It happens with the people that we feel the safest with, the people that we love the most. So why are we sometimes like this at home? Well, if you have ever snapped at someone that you love after work, if you have ever felt irritable or short-tempered or emotionally unavailable at the end of the day, then you were having this feeling. If you ever thought, why do the people closest to me get the worst version of me? How many of us have said that to ourselves? But I want you to pause right there, because this episode is not going to tell you to be calmer. It's not about teaching you better coping skills, and it's certainly not asking you to try harder, because we all try so hard every day. Instead, this episode is about understanding what is actually happening to you in your body after a full day of medicine. And I want to say this clearly before we go any further. Snapping at your loved ones after work, it is not a moral failure. It's also not a sign that you are ungrateful or you don't love them or care about them. It is not a sign that you are emotionally immature. And it is not proof that you are bad at relationships. Instead, it is often a sign that you have been trying to hold it together for far too long. So, what are we all doing all day that no one sees? Well, most physicians and others in healthcare spend their workdays doing things that don't show up on a task list. You are regulating other people's emotions. You are absorbing fear and grief and anger and urgency. You are making decisions every day with real life or death consequences. And throughout all of this, you are suppressing your own reactions so that you can remain quote unquote professional. You are managing your tone, your face, your body language. You're often ignoring your own body's cues like hunger and fatigue. You are ignoring the urge to step away because we are trained that we have to deal with these difficult situations. And all of that requires energy in our nervous system. So when you've been doing that all day or all night, by the time you get home or log off or switch and stop being on, then your system is not just empty because you didn't manage it well. It is empty because it was used up all day long. And often there really just isn't a whole lot left. So let's talk about what's happening with our nervous system, the key part, because this is the piece that changes the story. Many physicians live in what I think of as a contained survival mode. I know I certainly did. You're not falling apart at work. You're functioning. I even remember going so far as to tell someone when my mom died, I'll just get through the funeral. I'll just get through those bereavement days, and then I'll be okay. Not because I was really going to be okay, but because I had been trained so often to learn to pull it together that I just assumed that that was what was going to happen. But functioning, it is not the same thing as being regulated. Instead, contained survival mode looks like this. It looks like high vigilance. It looks like emotional suppression. It looks like cognitive overdrive and very little recovery between stressors. Your body is constantly braced but controlled without ever relaxing in the midst of those hard days. But then you leave work and you sort of turn off, and your nervous system finally senses something important. It realizes, I don't have to hold on to this anymore. And when that happens, what comes out first? Generally, the first thing that comes out is not calm. Instead, what often comes out first is irritability and sharpness and snapping and even withdrawal. This is not because you are unsafe with your loved ones. Instead, it's the reverse. It's because they are where you do feel safe, where your body feels safe enough to release. And unfortunately for some of us, that release does not look pretty. But that release is deeply human. You didn't fall apart earlier because you couldn't fall apart. You told your body that you couldn't. You can fall apart later because finally you know that you can. So unfortunately, our loved ones feel this so clearly. The people who are closest to us experience us through our state, not through our intentions. And so they're feeling that I just mentioned of the snapping or the irritability or the withdrawal. They are not feeling how much we actually care. Instead, they are feeling how present we are. And unfortunately, when you are depleted, especially after holding yourself for so long, even the small things can just feel like too much. It might be a question or a request or a story, noise or closeness. These are all things that are completely reasonable for our loved ones to ask of us.
And suddenly it feels like too much. Your response feels just disproportionate. Your response is you snap, or you shut down, or you pull away. And then there comes the internal spiral, where then you're criticizing what happened. Why did I react like that? What is wrong with me? Why can't I just be nicer? Why can't I enjoy this time with my loved ones? But rather than asking those questions, which are full of blame and shame for yourself, they're better questions. Instead, you can ask yourself, what has my nervous system been carrying all day? Because most of the time, your reaction isn't about that moment. It is about everything that you didn't process earlier. And so what can you do to help you process that so that you don't find yourself in that reaction mode? So let's return to my daughter's words with clarity. When she said that, when my daughter said, "You're less annoying now," I took it as, "I like you better now." And this time, I didn't explain it away. I didn't argue with it. And I certainly didn't minimize it. I listened, especially when she shared it with more specifics. And what I realized was this: she wasn't saying that I'm a better person now. She was saying that I am more accessible now. I'm less braced. I'm less reactive. I'm more spacious. I don't withdraw quite as much. And that realization didn't crush me. But it did matter. Because instead of using that moment as evidence that I had failed in the past, I chose to use it as information. Not as I wasn't good enough, but as I've actually improved. My capacity was different then, and that really matters. Because that shift from shame to information, well, it's everything. I can take it as evidence that the things I have been working on have helped me grow. They've helped me not only show up better for myself, but they've helped me show up better for the people who are around me in a real, tangible way. So this is a podcast for leaders and educators. And so why does this matter for all of us? So I want to zoom out a bit and talk about that. Because clearly, this is not just about home. If you are a leader, if you are an educator, if you supervise or mentor others, then you are constantly receiving information about how people are functioning. The same signs I mentioned before: irritability, withdrawal, defensiveness, missed deadlines, emotional sharpness. With your supervisor hat on, too often we interpret these as attitude problems or professionalism problems. But when you approach leadership with a trauma-informed lens, it allows you to ask a different question. What is this behavior actually telling us about load and capacity? In those moments, how can we approach it with curiosity instead of judgment? This moment and conversation with my daughter reminded me how powerful it is to pause instead of defend. How important it is to reflect instead of react. And this is something that we can teach our teams. We can say, let's treat this as information, and let us get curious instead of getting critical. Because what might this response be protecting? Now, don't get me wrong. This does not mean that I think that we should be lowering standards. Instead, it means that we should be creating conditions where people can actually meet them. And we can identify the true problem that is getting in their way. Because we know that regulated people lead better. They also communicate better. They perform better. And they live better. And when leaders are able to model this way of listening, not just at work, but in everyday life, it's able to ripple outward. It ripples outward into our families, into our teams, and then hopefully helps us shift the culture of medicine. So let's talk about practical shifts, not looking for perfection here, that might actually help. So first, make sure that you have a transition. It is nearly impossible to go directly from a braced medical intensity to emotional presence without an opportunity to have a bridge or a reset. Even 5 minutes of this could matter. Maybe it's in your car. Maybe it's music to dance out the day. Maybe it's you journaling or going for a walk. It will look different for every one of us. The second step is to name the state, not the story. Saying out loud, even if just to yourself, I am overloaded right now, allows you to create safety. And even better, if you can say it to your loved ones so they know what's going on, then you're sharing your life with them. The third step is to prioritize repair, not perfection. It's important to know that you're not going to do this perfectly. Repair is what allows us to build trust in our relationships and in our leadership. And when you can talk about it, it allows for us to move forward. And finally, if you find yourself snapping frequently, the answer is absolutely not more self-control. We understand self-control in medicine. What we actually need is less load, or at least to have more honesty about the load that we are carrying. And so to close, I want to invite you to think about a different way to listen that you love that has really just stung. Or if you have ever wanted to disappear into shame after snapping at somebody that you love or work with, I want to invite you to try something different. Instead of asking yourself, what is wrong with me? I want you to shift the question to, what is this showing me? That shift from judgment to reflection is where the real change can begin. It allows the real change for our relationships, for our teams, and honestly, for the culture of a profession that has asked us to carry far too much for far too long. Now, if this episode brought something into focus for you, something about capacity or alignment or load, then I have linked my free 15-minute alignment check workbook into the show notes. This workbook is not about fixing everything. It's about ensuring that the things that you are doing are aligned with your own values. It is just about listening, about paying attention before something else has to say it for you. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope to see you next week on the next episode of The Hidden Load.
Thanks for joining me on The Hidden Load. Tag me on Instagram at Dr. Tina Wheat or email me at santina@santinawheat.com with your takeaways and ideas. Don't forget to subscribe, and until next time, let's lighten your hidden load.